Welcome, friends, to another episode of the Mettle podcast. We are, this is an embarrassment of riches. We keep getting awesome folks that want to hop on and talk shop with us. So I'm extremely excited today. So, as always, joined by Alyson Laderman. Alyson?
Yeah, thanks, Omar. Yeah, we always say it's a special episode, but I swear we are extremely lucky with the people that we have had come and join us on the podcast. But as our typical disclaimer, though I am a lawyer and Omar is a cybersecurity expert, we are not your lawyer or cybersecurity expert for the purpose of the podcast. But that said, we are here to share our knowledge, our experience, well-worn wisdom that we have had from working in the respective fields and working with humanity, as it were, for several decades now. And so all that being said, are very excited to have with us today Daniel Eliot from NIST. And we're going to be talking about those small business resources, the cybersecurity framework, and all of the things to help you and your business really figure out your resilience posture and become cyber metal. So with that, Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you give us, give the audience a little bit of an introduction of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. So I'm Elliot. I am the lead for small business engagement within the National Institute of Standards and Technology's Applied Cybersecurity Division. So my goal with that role is really to create opportunities for small businesses to get more involved in our cybersecurity work here at NIST. And NIST is part of the United States Department of Commerce. And so, through that role, I'm focused on how do we create channels for small businesses to communicate their challenges and ideas? So we have communities of interest, or how can small businesses, how can we highlight best practices and resources that are designed for small businesses? Like there are a lot of great university-led small business clinics and student-led SOCs that are providing support to small businesses across the country. How can we raise awareness for small businesses to impact our work here at NIST, such as through projects at the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence or through our open comment periods so they can let their voices be heard as we draw publications. And then lastly, and I think maybe most importantly, is to create small business-focused resources that serve as on-ramps to some of our more foundational frameworks and publications. And we have some primers and quick start guides that we've been releasing over the last few years to make some of the guidelines, the cybersecurity guidelines within our publications more consumable by a resource-constrained organization to help them get started.
I love that. When did NIST start providing those opportunities? I know I thought the website was relatively new, but I might be off on that for the small business resources.
Yeah, well, it dates back a little bit. So there are essentially two acts, congressional acts that task NIST providing outreach and education to the nation's small business community. So there's the Cybersecurity Enhancement Act of 2014, and then there's Small Business Cybersecurity Act of 2018. And essentially, to paraphrase, both of them kind of say the same thing. They both direct NIST to disseminate cybersecurity technical standards and best practices that small businesses may use voluntarily to help them identify, assess, manage, and reduce their cybersecurity risks. And so after the NIST Small Business Cybersecurity Act of 2018, NIST set up our hub for small business cybersecurity resources, which is the NIST Small Business Cybersecurity Corner. And so that houses over 70 different resources for small businesses, all tailored to small businesses. And they're videos, tip sheets, case studies, quick start guides. And they're not only NIST resources as well. They're from nonprofits. They're from across the federal government, really trying to create a one-stop shop for small businesses when it comes to cybersecurity, best practices, resources.
And what's the website address for that? If a small business is listening, where can they go to get access to those resources?
Yeah, it's to look.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
It's perfectly fine. It's nist.gov/ITL/small business cyber.
And we'll be sure to put it in our comments and in the description of this so people will be able to go and check it out. And so you had mentioned about it's kind of a hub of all sorts of resources, including those that are built from others in the community. What kind of resources is NIST looking for to be able to add to that list and make that resource available to small businesses?
Yeah. So there are a lot of different topics that are on the site that we're collecting resources on. The biggest thing is Is it from a U.S. government entity or from a nonprofit? Is it free and available to the public? And is it accurate? So those are the things we're really looking for. And we're also not wanting to add a lot of like duplicative content. So if there's something that's duplicating existing content on there, then I'll look and to see which one is more useful and actionable for the small business. And we might switch them out, but we're always updating the site as new resources are developed, and always accepting resources as well. But we don't put private sector resources on there, just to keep it product and service agnostic when it comes to our resources and guidance.
Totally understood. And so if a small business is listening, I know that there tends to be this, well, I'm a small business. Why would I care about cyber resilience? They're not going to come after me. And I think all of us on the call know that that's not the reality, right? That makes them an easier target. But if you were to address that issue with a small business, from what you've seen and your experience, what would that advice be as to how and why they should really consider some sort of cyber resilience practice for their organization?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I always say when I hear, I'm too small to be a victim, or to be hacked or whatever it is, be a target. That's a logical fallacy, really, right? Because criminals, a lot of times they're casting a wide net and they don't even know who they're targeting, right? They're just casting as wide a net as possible. And whoever that link or, whatever else, then that's their victim. And so the assumption that I'm too small needs to be switched and really just say, everybody is a target. Every single person, individual, every single organization, we're a target of cybercrime. And I would add for small businesses, that to take it more seriously, because it's a competitive advantage for you to take cybersecurity seriously, not only for protecting customer data, right? Customers are getting more savvy and wanting to see if an organization is taking their data seriously and protecting it, but also, up and down the supply chain, organizations are requiring, in many cases, their supply chains to demonstrate that they are taking steps to have a weak link in their supply chain. So it is becoming a competitive advantage as well. But really, when it comes down to it, everybody's a target. And so you have to take cybersecurity seriously as we increasingly rely upon information technology and the internet to run an efficient and profitable business.
I think that's an excellent point, and a lot of things that small businesses don't consider, right? Which is their supply chain, the vendors that they work with, whether there is a requirement for certain cyber resilience. I'll add to that insurance, right? If you're looking to have some kind of cybersecurity or AI security insurance, and we're seeing that shift right now, where insurance carriers, some of them are saying, we're not going to even insure, right, for something if you're using AI, and especially if you're not putting in security measures in place. And so resources like the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, the NIST AI Risk Management Framework, which are free and accessible on the NIST.gov website, which we know the practitioners know, but maybe some of the businesses don't realize. But then they can go and access those materials and try to work through the frameworks, operationalize them, and really figure out their business posture and whether or not they qualify even to work with specific vendors that are requiring some level of security be in place, or at least understanding of what you have. I think in my experience, I've seen way too many companies. I know, Omar, you have as well. They don't know how many computers they even have out, who's working remote, who's not, who's accessing things with, their handheld computers, right? Looking at their phones and that type of stuff and accessing work emails from there, and all of the fun problems that can come from that. And so sitting through that process and really doing that initial eval of, oh goodness, how much are we touching? Because even a small business goes, well, I'm just using Microsoft. And we all know, Omar's smiling, right? Just using Teams. That there's so much that comes with that and having to unpack that. And that, of course, now also has AI baked into it, right? Just like Google Suite and Gemini and all of those other vendors. And so really taking those pieces together a bit more seriously to understand what their business is exposed to, and what their requirements may or may not be within their industry and within their vendor requirements and even insurance.
Yeah, as you're talking about that, the inventory is so critical. And I think the next step of that is, what if we lose access to X, Y, Z, right? What are these assets we rely upon to run our business? And then what would happen if I no longer have access to this system because of a cyber attack, or my e-commerce site, if we're locked out of our e-commerce site because of ransomware, or what if we lose access to our product designs, right?
Okay.
These are all very realistic things that could happen. And the great exercise is, what are our crown jewels? What are our most important technologies or data that we rely on for our business? And then what would happen? What would we do? And how would it impact our business if we no longer have access to it? Or if there is or if they're modified in some way by a threat actor. So beginning to think through these very realistic scenarios and understanding, what would we do in that instance? Who would we reach out to? How would it impact us running our business if we
Do we have a
lost that?
backup or two?
Yeah, one of the things one of the things a lot of people don't think about also is, what if a vendor has a cybersecurity attack, right? Or a supplier? What if they have an incident? Not only just us, what if they have an incident and it shuts them down? How would that impact us, right?
Right.
Maybe we're not able to run our business, but we don't have a cyber attack. It's a vendor or supplier that has it.
That's right.
So thinking outside, not only about us, but also about all those organizations that are providing goods and services into us as well.
I think that's an excellent point, right? We don't think as small businesses all the time, all of the different points of contact and where something can go wrong. And, when we're talking cyber resilience, it's not even just threat actors, right? And we're not just talking cyber, it's all resilience for your organization. So, I'm in Florida, Omar's up in New York. It could be a snow blizzard, right? A blizzard comes in, a huge snowstorm, and shuts things down. And now you're without supplies for X amount of time. Or we've got a hurricane that comes down. I mean, I had a hurricane where I was out for 8 days, no water, no electricity, nothing. I mean, so there's no internet, there's no washing, there's no food, we had to figure out. And that was in lots of miles of radius in that same area, to where you're going, well, I can't now get groceries, and I can't get gas, and I can't get, all of these different things. And I've lived that twice already. And so imagine if that does that to your business, and you're can you go without a week of business? And even if you don't have access to that supply for a week or two, well, just look back to COVID, right? When we were looking at vehicles and they were coming in from overseas, and because things were shut down, the technology pieces weren't being built because nobody was in the factories and things were shut down. And so there was a slower supply of the vehicles on the market, and cars that used to cost 27 grand were now 40 grand if you were lucky to even get one, right? That kind of thing. And how would your business be able to shift and grow with that change, right? That may or may not go back at some point when you see that increase as things come on, because there's always that backlog now, right? You've got to go and catch up with that lost time, energy, resource. And I think for small businesses using the NIST cybersecurity framework and doing that mental exercise and going through all those different points of contact, where can things go wrong? How can they go wrong? What's the most critical? What are things that we can do to put into place now? As if you're dealing with a crisis at the time without a plan, that is much worse than planning and not having to use the plan. Take the time now and say, if this shuts down in X, Y, or Z scenario, how long can we go without paying our employees? How long can we go without that supply? How long can we go without access to our accounts, the website being down, whatever? Look at everybody freaking out over Verizon for the last 48 hours, right? Everybody's like, I can't access my phone, and weird things are posting, and can't do those types of things. If that's your line, do you have an alternate source? Are you losing business, and those types of things? So I think NIST is a great resource, especially I look at the cybersecurity framework, and correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding was that it was really meant to be built. One, it's not mandatory, right? It's not a mandatory framework. It's voluntary. But in that recommendation, it was designed to be used by any organization. Doesn't matter, big, small, nonprofit, profit. It was meant to have that flexibility so that all businesses could have resource to that understanding of, how do I figure out where I am, where I want to go, what's the difference, how am I going to get there? How am I going to keep my business moving?
Yeah, the initial cybersecurity framework that was published in response to Executive Order 13636 was actually publication. The framework was for critical infrastructure. That's what it was initially for. And so it was published in 2014. And then as organizations of all sizes and sectors started seeing its usefulness and value in helping them build out a cybersecurity risk management strategy. When we updated it to CSF 2.0 in February of 2024, so 10 years after it initially published, we removed that critical infrastructure part of the name. Now it's just called the Cybersecurity Framework 2.0, because your point is it's voluntary guidance in most cases, right? From NIST, it's voluntary guidance. There are some organizations that require maybe their vendors to use it. But from NIST, it is a voluntary framework that really is for organizations of all sizes and sectors to really help them understand, assess, prioritize, and communicate their cybersecurity efforts.
Communication is such a big part of it. And that's something Omar and I talk about all the time, which is, we have conversations, we have tough conversations, and for businesses and organizations to be successful, they have to have that open line of communication with their vendors, with themselves, with their insurers, with their customers. It's when we create the silos is really when we see those problems emerge. You get to see them all.
Is there? There's two directions I want. Now that I have you, right? Like, I'm so excited to be talking to somebody like at the coalface, right? Of something that I know in my organization, it's sacrosanct, right? Like we were all just excited, right? When 2.0 came out, this was just something that infuses the entire program. And it's also, from a practitioner standpoint, I remember getting really deep in the weeds of 1 and 1.1 in prior jobs, and like getting decent and really like decent to good with that framework supercharged the career, right? So I'll always have a soft spot for the CSF. But if you had, I'll go with this one. If you had a magic wand first, and especially let's scope it down to the small business side of the house, right? Because that's your wheelhouse. What's just one thing that you would want small businesses just to say, you know what, we're not even going to fight you, Daniel. We're going to adopt it. Like, is there any piece where you go, if they could just do this one thing, they would be not 80% of the way there. I don't think that's feasible, but just the one thing where you go and, we kind of touched on it with, I'm not a target. So, but putting that aside, is there any place where you go, this is such a good resource, just please, if y'all could get on board with X, what would it be?
Gosh, that's a great question. Well, I mean, as far as an outcome, enable multi-factor authentication.
Bingo.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah. Nice.
It's not a cure-all, right? But it's a great start.
Nice. Yep. It is. Yep.
And, but when I'm talking to small businesses, I think one of the resources that we created when we published the cybersecurity framework in 2024, one of the things that we published along with it was a small business quick start guide.
Which has been tremendous, Daniel. Like that new evolution, that and the profiles, just, listen, I am, and again, nerding out, right? But like our community, when we saw what was coming down the pipeline, it was like the, those memes, right? Where the kids just go nuts and it's just like the reaction meme. That really was, man, because it's so responsive to the community. The community was begging for this. Y'all said, you know what? Yeah, sure. Those quick start guys.
Well, I was one of those in the community. When the cybersecurity framework first came out, I was working at the University of Delaware supporting small businesses. And I said, hey, NIST, wouldn't it be great if you had a small business resource? And so we actually, at the university, under my cybersecurity for small business program back then, we created one that was inspired off of this newfangled cybersecurity framework. And so I was really happy when, as my career evolved and I got to be part of NIST to lead the effort in creating a small business quick start guide based on the CSF 2.0. And we actually, as I was writing that, made sure that small businesses had input on it. So I ran it over to the National Association for Small Business Development Centers so that advisors could take a look at it. We had small businesses take a look at it just to say, as we published or before we published it, are we on the right track? And I had a pretty good, solid foundation because I've been working in and with small businesses for many years, but I was really excited to get it published. And we've had a lot of really great feedback. It's one of the most downloaded cybersecurity framework to resources. Actually, of all the resources we published, the small business one is right there at the top. But it really does create some. It helps a small business get started. It's everything in it is not for everyone, and it doesn't cover everything, right? Because every business is different. Every small business is different. You might have a small business that is a food truck down the street, or you might have a very sophisticated small business that is doing government contracting and deep R&D, research and development on, bioscience, whatever it is. And so the vast diversity in the small business community makes it kind of hard to create a small business resource.
Sure.
And so we always are sure to say, all right, take this guidance or these guidelines or these resources and make sure that you right size it for your organization, that you take into account your own unique needs and resources and regulatory environments, contractual obligations as you build out a cybersecurity risk management strategy. And so that quick start guide says all of that, but it also gives some great kind of foundational steps that an under-resourced organization, and when I say under-resourced, I really focus specifically on cybersecurity, that they can begin to start creating some sort of a cybersecurity risk management strategy.
That's wonderful for them to understand that, because that's one of the biggest things, right? Is it's not one size fits all, and that you are going to have separate regulations, you're going to have separate needs, and that this is a fully customizable framework, which is why it has that flexibility to address exactly what your business needs. You just have to take the time to shape it. But the quick start guide is a great place to start, right? To be able to go through and figure out what those parameters might be for the organization. You brought this up at the beginning, and then a little bit as you and Omar were talking, which was the opportunity to give feedback. Where are those opportunities for businesses to give feedback? How would they go about that process? I feel like a lot of them, for some whatever reason, don't realize, no, really, this is for you to come in and help us build. What do you need? Tell us what you want. Where can they go? How do they go about that process?
Yeah, there are a few venues. One is organizations or individuals are always welcome to email csf@nist.gov and let us know.
Nice and simple, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it emails all the time saying, hey, you should really do this, or love to have a resource on this, or so always seeking input that way. NIST also, when we write anything, we put our documents out for public comment. So if you go to nist.gov, you can register to receive our communications. And there are a ton of different topics. So you can choose to only receive communications about zero trust architecture or about small business or about whatever. So receiving those notifications, then you'll be apprised of when we have a comment period for a publication. When we have an RFI, which is a request for input, so that we might say, we're thinking about updating the cybersecurity framework. What would you propose, or what do you think should be updated? Or we're looking for guidance on this, or ideas for projects here. And so whenever we have requests for information, or wherever we have comment periods, that's really a great opportunity for the small business community to let their voice be heard within a particular document or RFI, so that the authors can consider that perspective. And so we look at every single comment that's submitted, whether there are 10 comments on a publication or whether there are thousands or tens of thousands. We go through them line by line, discuss each one. Sometimes we engage the person who submitted in a meeting and ask them more probing questions about what they mean or better ideas on the topic that they submitted on. And so we take them very seriously in our kind of process for how we work here at NIST.
I say, do you guys have one open currently? I think you have one right now on AI security that's open.
There is one right now on AI, on the cybersecurity AI profile. And I think that closes at the end of January.
Okay. So at least a couple more weeks. So if people want to go on and take a look at what the proposed is and provide some insight, now is a perfect time for them to go ahead and do that.
Definitely.
Say, Omar, you got extra thoughts? I see it.
Speaking to that process, right? Like you mentioned, you were there with the 1.1, seeing that, living it, right? Working on it with where you were 10 years later. kind of a two-parter, right? Do you think 3.0 is going to be another 10? Yes, no. And what, I know it's early, right? It's only 2 years into this cycle for 2.0, but where do you think it needs to go?
Well, I think industry would be very mad at us if we versioned it after the people just are getting used to 2.0.
Here's 2.2, just kidding, right? And then it's 3 years in, right? Yeah. Yeah.
My colleagues would hate me
That's
as well.
true, the process, right?
I don't know when CSF will be versioned. I am version it when we think that there's a need for it, when there's an industry demand for it, when the market says we need to update, or when there's enough change in the landscape that warrants a change. And we're always collecting ideas on what would be included in maybe a next version, tracking things, but I don't have a date or an idea.
No. It wasn't holding you there. Just in terms of will it accelerate is I think more kind of where, because again, given what we just talked about with AI, there'll be other constructs, of course, more specific, right? Like NIST it's feeding us that sweet goodness with the RMF, the AI RMF, like that. So there's no lack of guidance, thankfully, and it's which is very it's very welcome, and we say thank you. Like this is the community saying thanks, Dan, because it's man, flying without it, right? And the constant updates to 853 in my neck of the woods with healthcare for sure, right? Like in terms of basing it off of that, just tremendous. But I just was wondering, get your thoughts on if it's gonna accelerate, or if are you seeing any upswell in, like you said, hey, because I'll back up a second. Being a policy writer, in the 9 to 5, the second you get that thing out there, suddenly folks come out of the woodwork and go, wait a second, it could have used this, and this. And you're like, man, we just got it through the process. It just got V1 is just inked. And now it's like, wait a second, given that of course you should reassess periodically, some regulatory frameworks demand it, as they should. But is there anything, or are you starting to see, even commentary like, hey, accrete to certain topics at all? Again, with what you can disclose, not saying, give us the inside baseball, but what do you see in there?
Yeah, no, I'm not really seeing specific topics. I'm not really seeing kind of anything right now that would inform a big change to the CSF. As I said, there are smaller kind of nuances or things that we're tracking. One of the great things about the CSF and why I think it goes so long, I don't think it'll be 10 years before we version it again, but I do think, the way it's written, technology agnostic, and it really is kind of at a level that's high enough where it encompasses a lot and really makes it flexible in a changing environment and makes it responsive as things change. And so for that, it has a pretty long shelf life.
It does. It really does.
On its own. But, as I said, we're continuing to watch things, and as we see things that might be helpful, we'll continue to kind of consider adding, revisioning.
And speaking,
I know that's not a great answer to your question.
But
it's an honest answer. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. And it also, it's not, the shelf life is really one of the, I think, absolute strong suits of the construct, because, from vetting vendors, if we see reference to, and it's still very soon since 1.1 to the 2.0 shift, if we see reference to CSF and it's 1 or 1.1, truly, and I don't know if anyone thinks this, but I'm going to dispel that rumor. We're not going, oh no, they're not on 2.0. We're happy that they're referencing CSF. That's where it's not as though, they're not 2.0, we can't do business. No, that it's such a strong foundational document, and it speaks to then an organization's willingness to engage in the space. At least they're having these thoughts. They're thinking about the program. They're trying to, maybe, like you said, tailor it to their specific context. So it's not, again, it's such a seminal moment for me in my cyber career of it's pre getting exposed to CSF and then post that it's, I just want to stress that. And, I don't want to speak out of turn here, right? It's not like you guys are gonna engage in an anchorman fight with like the ISO people, right? So it's not like we're gonna meet. But the thing that always struck me as the difference there, truly, in my opinion, was that responsiveness, and was that longevity, and was that modularity. The quick start guide, especially, Dan, you can see that it was done and created in a way that's, listen, pick what works. Don't get overwhelmed by what Alyson said, back when it was the 108 stars of destiny, right? Like they trimmed one, but like it used to, because I remember I saw the spreadsheet once and I was like, oh Lord, I got to learn this. Like, I don't know. Can I go back to, selling insurance? Like, can I get my old job back? This is hard, but you've taken, and again, in like the government setting, I want to really footstop the responsiveness and how fast those cycles are, and how just what you said, you read all those emails, you go line by line, and it's not as though policy commentary can just be summarized. You have to go line by line. That's laborious, no?
Yeah. Most definitely. Oh, yeah. And I want to add one other thing. You had mentioned ISO. And one of the kind of features of the cybersecurity framework is that it is designed to be used in conjunction with other frameworks and standards, right? It's informed by others and is to be used with them. So it's a very high level. And then something like an ISO or like 853, and we're really getting into weeds here. But those are kind of more of the, here's how we do it. The cybersecurity framework is the, what do we do?
Yep.
Right. Then you get into the informative references of HIPAA or PCI or these are what you do or And so one of the things that we have, one of the tools that we have is our online informative references website called OLIR. You're able to see. So if you're working with this, maybe you have you have to use cybersecurity framework. You have to use 853, or you also have to use PCI. So what you're able to do in this online informative references database is, okay, I can look at cybersecurity framework, and then I'm going to select references that have been submitted to NIST. And now I can see them all in one spreadsheet mapped to each other. And so it's really for, typically, I don't envision a general small business, that cybersecurity staff or supporting them to be doing this. But for that one, maybe cybersecurity person who is also the chief privacy officer, the chief technology officer, maybe part-time custodian,
janitor,
might help them as they're trying to see across all these different frameworks and standards. And so I'm trying to, as I talk to small businesses, trying to make sure I highlight resources that are not only for kind of the leaders, if maybe they don't have in-house cybersecurity expertise or contracted cybersecurity expertise, but also those who are those one-person shops who is tasked with cybersecurity risk management, and they're like, what resources can help me with all of this? That online informative references database is a great place to look and see kind of the relationships across different publications.
You said that was OLIR?
OLIR.
Do you know what the website is?
OLIR.
Okay.
It used to be that, as we all know, I think on this pod, that used to be what consultants would charge you mid five figures to do, just that crosswalking. And for me, breaking in to cyber, that was such, I had a physical copy. That's how old school it was. And that thing was dog-eared. You could tell like greasy fingerprints on the maps in the informative references section, because it served as just a guide to understand the field in a way. If you really dip down into that, understanding like where, CIS plugs in, right? Where PCI goes, or where, HIPAA might go, where high tech, high trust. It's just, it was such and again, what also baffled me too, especially coming up, was like, this stuff is free. That bowled me over the head. I felt like, again, I was, going onto the website, like, is this free? Is this a trap? Like, am I going to get, is this like LimeWire? Right.
We're
Like,
gonna
Well,
send
these
you a
are
bill.
free. These are taxpayer funded.
Sure.
I'll say
sure.
that.
Absolutely true. But
There
I'm
you
not getting, I don't get, and I'm not going to name names, but everyone's going to know, like, I don't get like a price in Swiss francs when I go, or have to, at least get the P card approval, not knocking that. But again, it's the democratization of this type of knowledge, especially at a point in time when, as you know, like, it's so needed, was such a, that's why, like, I'm full disclosure. I have a shirt that says "I heart NIST." Like, it's not. I'm gonna full on.
Why are you not wearing it today?
I'm thinking of it, and I'm like, I should have busted that out today.
I would have
Like,
paid you to wear that.
I'm gonna absolutely no. It's a nice 3/4 length, right? It's great. It's great in the summer. It's not summer. That's why, Alyson. It's 29 degrees.
I was saying it's
here.
a little. You could have worn a shirt underneath it, and then had the "I heart NIST" on top with a jacket,
with a little jacket in the hood,
with a hoodie.
But then,
if you're gonna go full cyber, you got to have the hoodie. And
you have to, right? And like the bad lighting and the acne, which right. But no, it can't overstate the impact of the work that y'all do. I don't know if you hear that enough, but I wanted to give you your flowers, right, for a second here, because holy moly, it's just, and it just continues. I'll have that tabbed, and it'll be something I go back and. It's like one of those, you read it and you engage with it, and then the context changes at what you're doing, and then you go back and you go, oh, wait a second. Then this is how that filters in. And as you mentioned, the other resources of which they're meant, NIST stays busy, and thankfully so. It's just and the weaving that y'all do. I think what I've seen. And has this been a conscious thing where you've made, it seems as though in many of the newer publications, you really straight up explicitly shout out, like, this is where this ties back to this other piece of like other NIST publications, versus back in the day, it used to be maybe a little bit more choose your own adventure slightly. But like, I feel that's a bit tighter. And was that it had to have been a conscious effort, right? Like, as a response to feedback?
Yeah, it is. It is conscious, and it is in response to feedback. I mean, NIST as a whole, not just cybersecurity, though it feels like it, I think it was, the last number was 25,000 publications. Not all of them are cybersecurity. We have many different areas of research outside of cybersecurity, but we have a lot of publications, and we have a lot of publications within our cybersecurity, our applied cybersecurity division, within our computer security division, our engineering labs. And so making sure that we are referencing other publications, that we're creating tools like our cybersecurity and privacy reference tool, so that you can see kind of threads across or through publications. So it's a very conscious effort to try and help practitioners. I mean, that is what we are doing. That's what we're trying to do, is help organizations protect their organizations from cyber criminals. So doing everything we can to make that easier and to make our publications more consumable, more actionable, easier to implement, that is always at the top of our minds. It's definitely a conscious effort to try to help out as much as we can and show relationships across publications.
So that is probably one of the biggest takeaways, I think, for any of the businesses that are listening, is it's a resource. It's here to help. They're listening. They're going to adapt and help, make decisions based on your feedback and your input. And so don't sleep on this opportunity to be part of the change that helps all of us at the end of the day. It's going to help you. It's going to help your neighbor, right? Your other organizations, other small and even larger businesses, as we go through and develop this together. Really, it's a community effort with obviously NIST guidance and oversight.
And you heard it, and you heard it from Daniel here, right? MFA, all the things. All right.
Yes.
There's no time. There's no excuses anymore. There's 17 ways you can. By goodness, please do. Even as a small business, there's good grief, right? It's so foundational, Dan.
Yeah.
Goodness.
You'd be surprised how many don't do it. Well, you wouldn't be surprised. You see it every day, Omar.
That's why it's one of the critical metrics that we use. It should be. It's one of those where, I mean, it was like refreshing to hear that from you, Dan, but like not surprising. Yeah. But also then like just maddeningly simple almost. It's there. It's not like it used to be. I mean, even like the technology implementers are trying to figure out even how to make it easier, right? Where it's just like, give a glance, do something like wink, and then yes, okay, good, you're in. But something to that nature. As we're wrapping up, is there anything you want to hit again? Any listeners out there with what's brewing, or just kind of closing thoughts here, Dan?
Yeah, I think I want to shout out a recent addition to the Small Business Cybersecurity Corner, because one of the comments we often hear when we're talking to small businesses is, I don't have a managed services provider, or I don't have in-house cybersecurity expertise. I don't have the resources for that, and I'm focused on making my next sale or making payroll, which is fair. And so one of the resources we recently published, and we developed it first at a conference out in Colorado over the summer. We got a lot of feedback from university-led cybersecurity, small business cybersecurity clinics. And then we took that feedback and we wrote a document called Building Out Your Small Business Cybersecurity Team. And then we ran it through our small business community of interest, which is small business owners and vendors and operators, to get their input. And so we finally published it last year, or in November, actually. And Building Your Small Business Cybersecurity Team resource on our Small Business Cybersecurity Corner site really helps you understand kind of what it means for a small business to build out a team, right? That could be hiring an MSP or an MSSP. That could mean maybe upskilling somebody on our payroll already. Might have an interest in learning more about cybersecurity, and that could help them further their career in different ways. It could mean engaging a local university or a local nonprofit. It could be a mix of all the above. So we provide a lot of options, and I don't want small businesses to just kind of feel defeated when it comes to cybersecurity, because it's easy to feel defeated. It's not an easy topic to think about. Enterprise risk management as a whole isn't something that's easy for people to talk about or think about. And so we have that new resource on Building Your Small Business Cybersecurity Team that I just want to be sure that I highlight, because I think it's one of those things that small businesses are often saying, well, I don't have somebody in my corner helping me with this. And this helps them think through different kind of different ways to think about what it means to build out my cybersecurity team.
That's fantastic. And I know we will be sure to include a link to that when we do the description for this podcast, so people can find it easier when they hear this part of it. Because I think that's such a crucial point. Is it's not just, oh, I'm not going to be a victim, but it's also, I don't have time, resources, understanding where do I start? I mean, when you are a small business and or a startup in that area, there are just it's drinking from a fire hose. There are so many different things that you are doing at one time. You're wearing multiple hats, multiple roles, add in exhaustion, add in small budget. And that is the recipe for we didn't turn on MFA and bad things to happen. So I think having that resource available where a business can take a peek and go, okay, we're going to eat this elephant one bite at a time, right? We're going to take little bites. We're going to figure out what we can do right now and make those changes. And I think that's such a crucial point for small businesses to understand, right? It doesn't have to be all or nothing, right? Security is not an on-off, you're secure or you're not. There are various levels. It's understanding that risk landscape. What are you willing to take on? What can you afford to take on? What can you deal with now? What can you afford to deal with now? What's on the roadmap in the future? And so a lot of it is that planning, but where do you start? So that is a fantastic way for them to go, here's how I can start. Decide if I'm going to have an MSP, if I'm bringing in someone else, if I'm working with another nonprofit. So thank you. That's a wonderful ad, and we'll make sure to have that link in the description for the episode as well.
I want to say your passion for helping and practically assisting your constituency is palpable, and there's never a point at which I ever got that it's not literally the through line inside of everything that you do. And it's really awesome to see someone who's had a career that, like, focused and has been, walking the talk like you have. This is how I was hoping it would go. But they say don't meet your heroes, but in this case, we bucked that trend. So thank you, Daniel, for hopping on. Thank you, listeners, for joining us today. And as always, keep it cyber metal. Thanks.